Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eccentric Mind Podcast with your host, George Hernandez. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I broke down and read the 4 agreements for my 5th time this past week, and I extracted 8 lessons from this book that has changed my life. From the very first time that I read it over to the 5th time, there seems to be something new that I learn every single time because the book doesn't change, but I change as a person, and I grow and I develop and I refine myself. And there are new things that I didn't pick up, that I didn't understand beforehand, to which now I read it and completely see the differences in what I first read and to my last read. It's interesting. I also highly recommend that you annotate inside of your books. This is what literally mine looks like. It's just it's literally non-stop. And what I love about my book specifically is I've given this book like candy out to like 6 or 7 people. But what I love most is that, let's see if I can find one. There will be moments where I write inside of it in like a black ink. And then I'll write in my second read, which was a blue ink. And then I had a red ink, and then I had a pink ink. So it just goes to show the different Georges that were inside of this book and what he picked up along the way. And there was one specific line where I completely misread and misunderstood. And then the second time I read, I figured out, I completely misunderstood that, and I course corrected. So I highly recommend that you write inside of your books and actually use your books, because that's the purpose of them. Anyways, yeah, I pulled out and extracted 8 lessons from this book that have completely changed the trajectory of my life. This time around, it's just coming into soft land, the things, the experiences, the lessons, the challenges that I've faced, the beliefs that I've picked up along the way, and why I've picked them up for certain reasons. And I want to share specifically how this book has changed my life and the lessons that I've extracted from them. So hopefully you guys can sit within yourselves, so you guys can contemplate, make yourself think, and really pick up the meat and potatoes from this podcast episode to use it into your life and hopefully change your life for the better. So, lesson number 1, your mind is a fertile ground ready to accept seeds. Be careful which ones you accept and grow. Your mind is like a soil that accepts, plants, and grows seeds. You're growing a garden all by your choosing. I think about Jim Rohn's quote that says, guard the door of your mind. Guard the door of your mind. So effortlessly we can have these dramas that we create on our own based on what we're being subjected to. So if we have pools of negativity that we're involved in, and people are saying this, they're gossiping about that, they're talking about their boss, their manager, their girlfriend, whatever it may be, we then subject ourselves to that, and we allow ourselves to start growing these plants of fear, of rejection, of scarcity, that over a long course of time, the more we're subjected to it, which means around it, the more we're around it, the more we're immersed inside of it, the more likely that we're going to start growing these gardens of fear, of scarcity, of obscurity, of all of these things that is not growing fruit for us, but making our life more miserable by the day. So perceive yourself, or your mind in this case, like a fertile ground, or if people who don't understand a fertile ground, like a baby that's so easy and so ready to soak up any information. So be careful with who you surround yourself with. Be careful of the words that you take in, and also be careful of the words that you use against yourself. Lesson number 2 would be, your life is all but a dream you have no awareness of. This one's interesting. Your parents captured your attention as a child, then beat you with repetition, the beliefs, identity, and perspective of the world that you call yours. But it's really a dream your parents inflicted upon you. You're a former stone You are a former stone block turned into a replicate version of their younger self, for they were the ones with the gavel and the needle puncturing you into the shape that you once, or that you are now. You're not fully you, but you're not fully them either. It's as if we live in the middle of a fog that doesn't let us see any further than our own nose. We live in a fog that is not even real. Yeah, attention. Attention is by far one of the most important aspects that we are capable of as humans. Not only that, but our word as well, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Attention is extremely important, and as children, like I mentioned before, we are sponges to any type of information or anything that is inflicted upon us, we understand. And as we aged, as we developed, we were domesticated by our parents. And the reason how we were domesticated is by this thing called good and bad, but also reward and punishment. You know, we come home with a ticket saying George was good today, and we are rewarded with Hollywood Video. We receive a punishment that we don't have good enough grades, so therefore we're not allowed to play the PlayStation. By the way that our parents taught us, we come to realize what our world is like, and we have this perspective on what we believe the world to be, and we unknowingly have this mist covering us, this fog covering us on what we believe the world to be, when there's a whole outside perspective on what the world actually is. And so your life is all but a dream you have no awareness of. I can think about this a lot when it comes to talking to authority. I can't speak to a certain authority in a certain way because I have to provide them respect. But who knows that me providing them respect just makes me less able to make an impressionable, like a good impression to them. And therefore, because I don't make a good impression to them, maybe I don't get an opportunity for work. And it's just this way that your parents taught you. And me, myself, my parents did a fantastic job with me, and I'm utterly grateful for what they showed me, the lessons that I've learned from them, and what ornaments off of their tree that I have now applied to my own tree. However, there are certain things that I had to grow out of, something I had to be aware of, because their perspectives, their beliefs, and their ideologies weren't congruent to the man that I wanted to become. So therefore, I had to become aware of what was holding me back from the person that I wanted to be. So therefore, I was then able to change those beliefs, and now I'm in the position that I'm in now. However, most people never have that wake-up call, that flip of the switch, because they're always functioning in this dream that they live in. And most of the time, when you age, your parents are originally your domesticators and the ones that judge you and the ones that inflict some form of pain on you because they are your authority figure, as they should. However, once you grow, you no longer need your parents to domesticate you or judge you. That becomes your job. And unfortunately, it either gets worse or it stays the same to the level at which you are no longer to leave that dream, and you are by nature just a replicate version of themselves or of your parents, not fully yourself. And yeah, your life is all but a dream you have no awareness of. Don Miguel Ruiz says again, it's as if we live in the middle of a fog that doesn't allow us to see any further than our own nose. We live in a fog that is not even real. Lesson number 3. Using the word negatively is easier and stickier, but using the word positively is most powerful and long-lasting. I think about this a lot, where for some reason I had this belief that I was stupid for a very long time. I want to say from probably an entire decade, from 10 to 20. I had this growing residual feeling as though I was some stupid, inconsiderate, incompetent, holds no value on the world person. And the more I aged, the more I got older, the more resentful I got, the more cynical I got, the more I was a shell of who I wanted to be. And I used the word against myself over and over and over again, because parents will call you a certain name. Because they are your authority figure, you believe that to be true. Therefore, you go and find evidence convincing you that it's true. So I believed that I was stupid. So I did foolish activities. I did things that weren't, there was no reason to do those things. I, for some reason, believed that I was too dumb or that I had ADHD to read a book or write. I never got my homework done. I almost didn't graduate high school. I got terrible grades in high school and had to cheat off of people because I was convinced that I was stupid and that I wasn't able to finish the assignments on my own. Man, yeah. Therefore, I aligned a lot of my beliefs with the activities, or I aligned my activities with the belief that I had. I was using the word against myself. I was constantly calling myself stupid, or I was self-deprecating to the point where it wasn't funny, just to the point where it was harsh. And I don't know if that's you at this current moment, who you're dealing with this sense that you are a certain way, or because of what your parents told you were, you are now that. But I promise you, you're not. It's just this repetitious, domesticated, beat into you ideology that you have that is not based on facts, truth, or real evidence. You're giving yourself evidence because you believe that to be true, but it can be changed. And for somebody who once believed that they were stupid and inconsiderate, incompetent, somebody who held no value unto the world, who had no purpose, there seems to be a lot of that in my life now. And it's because I was aware of what I was dealing with, of how, like, I broke the fourth wall when I read this chapter. I broke the fourth fucking wall and realized that I was just doing it to myself, and that it wasn't anybody else's fault but my own. So you're not stupid. You just don't have the awareness yet to realize that it's just you doing it to yourself. Lesson number 4, sin and impeccability and the differences. This one's a short one, but if you think about sin, if you were to define it, definitions go a long way in figuring out what the world is like and figuring out the things that you do. So if you can define certain words and objectively look at them, understand them, intellectualize them in however way you want, you can really understand the world and understand the things that you're doing, and hopefully provide yourself some form of awareness that, provides you that awareness to be able to move through life in an easier, fashionable way. Sin equals going against yourself, working in opposition to your needs. And if we were to define impeccability in the word, or in the book, The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz breaks down impeccability based on the Latin and the Greek words, that impeccability means without sin. And it's to take accountability and responsibility for your actions and to not go against yourself. And what he means by that, by not going against yourself, means not castigating yourself, not condemning yourself or self-rejecting, but being a vessel of true love and compassion towards yourself. It's to see every choice as that, a choice that you made without the foresight to know if it'll go right or wrong, and having the compassion for yourself as a human for making a mistake, and not letting the mistake dwell into who you are as a person. Living in sin is constant. Self-rejection, fear, anxiety, and always as though you're doing something wrong for not being a certain way, not fully alive in your own, but still breathing. Impeccability is the way of regaining your power back. So understand, sin is to go against yourself. Impeccability is to take responsibility for yourself. When you sin, you're always feeling as though you're behind, feeling as though you're not good enough. But when you're impeccable, you have the understanding that you're not where you want to be, but you have the power to go and get the place where you want to be. And that's such a grand difference, and it's so important to have that frame of thinking, and hopefully allows you to realize what it is that you're doing and maybe get yourself right back onto the right path. Lesson number 5, nothing other people do is because of you. It's because of themselves. Everyone has a dream, a fantasy, or some smoke that they live in. When someone says something at you, they're not talking to you. They're sharing a worldview that's been implemented into their head that their people built into them by repetition. It's not about you. It's about their inability to handle, come to land, or be aware of the programming that causes the outburst. It's not what you said, but what they have within themselves. Don Miguel Ruiz says it really well here. He says, it is not what you're saying that is hurting them, just the wounds that were touched by what you said. Everyone has some smoke that they're living in. Everyone has some dream that they're living in that was ingrained into them by what their parents taught them and how they were domesticated as children, to which now they became their own domesticators and their own judges. So it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about how they were raised. It's about how they perceive the world. It's about their perspective, their beliefs, how one was taught, how one was treated, to which now they treat others. It's not about you. It is literally never about you. It's always about them. And the sooner that you can understand that, the more self-compassion that you can have for yourself, but also have compassion for the other individual as well. Because one of the best skills that you can have as an individual who's growing up in this modern society, who wants to improve upon yourself, is once you can fully step into the shoes of other people, show them empathy, show them compassion for what they have to deal with, the more powerful you become into the world, because you become untouchable, understanding that the poison that they send to you will not touch you. And that is so fucking valuable. If you can just take that from this podcast episode, that if you can step into the shoes of other people, you will be untouchable. Lesson number 6 that segues perfectly from lesson 5 to 6 is don't take anything personally. This is a agreement in and of itself in the book. This is one of the most, not the most important chapter, but it is fucking awesome. So, carrying on with what we shared in the previous lesson, considering everyone has a dream or a fantasy that we live in, the point of understanding that it's not about you, it's about them, and the sooner you realize that ultimate truth, the sooner you realize there's no need to consume of the poison other people throw onto you. Meaning, the easier it'll be to walk away and to cut the person off or rid it altogether. To take things personally means that what they said to you is something that you believe in yourself to be true. Therefore, that's what causes you to spring and get emotional and have that outburst of anger. But it's also poison. They are sending you a drink, a beverage of poison ready for you to consume. And it's up to you to decide whether you will consume it or not. This is hard, right? We're all fucking humans at the end of the day. We all have these things that tilt us or trigger us or make us upset based on what somebody says. And we all have these anxieties. We all have these inadequacies that either some people know about or nobody fucking knows about. But we're all insecure individuals. And obviously the point of this is not to be perfect. The point of it is to be aware. And the more aware you are, the more you're able to transcend this issue that you have into something that no longer harms you in any way. The point of this whole lesson in of itself is that you can't think of it as though it's about you. Because the more you think that everything is about you, in and of itself, that's what a narcissistic person does. They believe that everything is about them. So you don't want to have that frame of thinking. Not only that, they are in a world of themselves. They have been taught a world that is a labyrinth of information, an iceberg of information that you have no involvement in, something you have no awareness of what they had to deal with. But it goes the same way with you. If somebody tells you you're a piece of shit, that you're stupid and that you're inconsiderate, they have no idea about the life that you've lived. And if none of that is pointed to be true, then why are you going to take it personally if it's not true? Because you do perceive yourself as a considerate, healthy, wise, willing, and able and competent person. So therefore, why are you going to believe what somebody said who you just met 5 seconds ago, telling you that you're dumb, that you're stupid, that you're inconsiderate? You wouldn't believe that, right? So they're offering you that poison to consume, and it's up to you to decide, do I want to consume this, or do I have enough evidence convincing me that I'm not an inconsiderate piece of shit? And therefore, I don't have to consume it because I understand, oh, he's just having a bad day. Oh, he was probably just raised this way. Oh, he's dealing with this certain thing. Oh, he just had this happen to him right now. Therefore, he's angry. So I don't need to take this poison because it's not about me. It's about them. Lesson number 7. All sadness and drama is rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Yeah, this one's cool. And I want to say that one again. All sadness and drama is rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Banger. Yeah, I just have this quick little story in this anecdote. I remember when I first got my first full-time job at 19 years old, 20 years old, and I remember so clearly thinking, whenever I made some form of mistake, whenever I said something that wasn't popular, whenever I showed up late or was upset that I had to leave late, I had this growing belief and this drama and this story that I told myself inside of my head that everybody else around me hates me. And whenever I had this thought, I believed that it was true. Therefore, I acted as though it was true. I stayed away from people. I wasn't talking to them. I spoke up in a certain way. And most of the time, I was just creating that drama inside of my head. And literally, they didn't hate me at all. So most of the time, all our sadness and all our drama is rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Miguel Ruiz talks about that too in the book, is that how many times have we had relationships where we believed our spouse, our husband, our wife, our partner, our girlfriend, whatever it is, thought that they knew something about us that we didn't feel the need to talk about because they know us so well. They know exactly what we're dealing with. They know how to treat us in this certain way. So I don't have to tell them. I'm going to expect them to mind read me. And then they're going to get me the teddy bear. They're going to give me the hug. They're going to give me the roses. They're going to give me the cuddles that I want. But most of the time when they don't do that thing, an issue happens. So that's you making an assumption, thinking that somebody else can possibly read your mind, which is what causes the problems. Making assumptions is, I wrote it down. I don't know if I remember it. Making assumptions is preparation. No, making assumptions is a lack of courage masqueraded as preparation. Yeah, 100%. And if that's you, just understand yeah, I'm going to leave it right there. That's literally perfect. That's the best takeaway that I can make. Lesson number 8. Courage is the true virtue towards changing. If I learn anything from this book, it's courage is the way to make any form of change that you want to make. I've learned all my best lessons from hesitation. And typically, courage was the virtue I wished I had in the moment to do the thing in front of me. Change is extremely hard. Nobody has done it around you. Nobody truly fucking changes themselves because we've unfortunately inhibited the way we think and act. Courage isn't beating your chest strong. Courage is a fixed state that is a one-size-fits-all, only if we recognize the challenge in front of us and don't let fear overtake our actions. In order to let these changes happen, based on what this book explicates, is up to us to take accountability, to be responsible, and to be impeccable. To refuse sin and let courage take us the next step and the next step after that. Yeah. Courage is a virtue, man. Courage is extremely tough to have because you're always sitting within this pool of fear that something is going to go wrong. But to have fear and to do it anyway is the definition and the act of courage. Courage is hard to do. It's hard to balance because change is probably the hardest, for some reason, one of the hardest things that a fucking human can do, because we get so gradually accustomed to our ways of thinking, our ways of acting, our behaviors, our habits, and making any type of change is far more painful than the pain of making change. And if you really want to make some form of change, if you want this book to help you in any way, you have to show up and do the thing that you don't want to do. Not only that, in order to actually change is by taking actionable steps in order to make that change happen. It's not this grand kumbaya pulling of the lever, dragging all the chips over to you to make the change. It's about identifying steps that you understand take you to the position where you want to get to, because doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is a definition of insanity. If you are unsatisfied with where you're at, if you're not in the position that you want to be, but you think that somehow things are going to change if you don't move, then you're greatly fucking mistaken. Because you have to identify the new things that your future self does, or is around, that you need to start making that change right now in order to become that person. I wouldn't have made any type of change if I just read this fucking book, was in awe, and didn't take any steps towards making it happen. These agreements are quite easy to follow. Sometimes it's tough because you are programmed in a way to, you're programmed in a certain way to act a certain way. But the more you consistently show up, the more you follow these routines, these steps, these habits, because you decided to put it upon yourself, the more you will make a change. And yeah, dude, that's all I got. I think this is probably one of the best podcast episodes I've delivered, and I'm pretty proud of that at the moment. But I hope you learned something. I hope you picked something up, and if there was one thing that you took away from this podcast episode, go and fucking make that happen. If one thing is sticking to you, if there's something you can't stop thinking about, go and make it happen. Action, 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 action. Fucking go do it. Anyway, this has been the Eccentric Mind Podcast with your host, George Hernandez. I appreciate you very much for listening and taking the time to listen to me. If you guys are interested in any more podcast episodes, go ahead and click the description below, or click wherever I place the tag on, and go ahead and listen to some of the other podcast episodes. If you think somebody else also resonates with this, go ahead and share it to them, so that way we can make any form of impact that we can to anybody that is willing to listen. So I appreciate you dearly for listening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one. Banger.